Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 92. Shen Qiao brought Yuan Song with him up the mountain. Wushi as always trailed behind, not close not far, looking around left and right, a leisurely posture. After Wuxia sect suffered the calamity, there were few left in the sect, posted to look out around the property. There were no extra hands that could be delegated to the base of the mountain. Shen Qiao had a straight route directly to just before the sect gates, before a figure carrying a sword walked towards them. Who is the esteemed guest visiting Wuxia sect? After speaking, they saw that it was Shen Qiao. Their guarded expression at once turned into joy, even their tone changed. "It's you, Shen Daozang." Shen Qiao smiled. "Yuanbei, your Wuzhong has improved again, that's worthy of congratulations." Fan Yuanbei was Yu Kunqi's disciple, naturally would be considered Shen Qiao's Wanbei. Directly using his name was not disrespectful. Shen Qiao, on the day of his fight with Kunyi, everyone in Wuxia sect saw with their own eyes. They had no qualms about his ability, so when he heard Shen Qiao say this, Fan Yuanbei was instead very happy. "Many thanks Shen Daozang for your praise, please come in." Shizun and sect leader were still thinking about you, seeing that you were gone so long without any contact. We even looked for news of you, heard that in Chang'an you fought two Hehuan sect elders, they died beneath your sword. Everyone in Wuxia sect was very happy, you are really strong. With outsiders he usually didn't say much, after becoming familiar he would talk ceaselessly. Shen Qiao smiled as he listened, and didn't interrupt, let him speak until he was content. Among Wuxia sect's disciples, although their numbers were fewer, they were more united. After so much loss, after grief, there were instead smiles on people's faces, their interactions friendlier. Along their route the disciples they encountered were just 2 or 3 small cats, but Shen Qiao had done Wuxia sect a huge favor. Anyone seeing Shen Qiao had a similar reaction to Fan Yuanbei. So by the grace of Shen Qiao's presence, Wushi and Yuan Song followed him into the sect without being subject to further questioning. Only Wushi's appearance stood out too much, drew plenty of curious stares, compared to Yuan Song who didn't attract too much attention. Zhao Qianying was in the middle of discussing matters with Yu Kunqi, hearing of Shen Qiao's return, hurried out to welcome them. After many days apart, Zhao Qianying's charisma was the same. Her features would not be considered extraordinary, but she was accomplished and beautiful. Being sect leader also lent her an air of generosity and tolerance that was quite uncommon. This sense of presence, even on Hehuan sect Zongju Yuanzai Uxiu, Shen Qiao had not seen before. Zhao Qianying folded her hands together and smiled. Shen Daozang has finally returned. Taishan is close to the East Sea, more than 1,000 li away from Chang'an. News is slow to travel. The event outside Chang'an where you were up against 3, we've just heard about not too long ago. We're even more bowled over by Shen Daozang's charisma, and now here you are. Shen Qiao returned the greeting. I was gone for a long while, leaving Shiwu here, causing trouble for Zhao Zongju and everyone here. Zhao Qianying, Shen Daozang speaks too politely. Shiwu is a good kid, he has a lot of self-discipline for someone so young. Without anyone prompting before sunrise he will join the other Wuxia sect disciples in their morning training, diligently without fail, every day. Shen Qiao hearing this was reassured, shared a few more words with Yu Kunqi. Zhao Qianying had long seen the two people standing behind him, one big one small, and so smiled, "And the two of you are?" Shen Qiao coughed, "One is Huanyu sect's Yan Zongju, the youth is called Yuan Song, I brought this child back from Chang'an. From Chang'an, with the surname Yuan, one only need to have heard the tale of Shen Qiao's battle with Hehuan sect, against an army of 1,000 brought out Yuan families remaining orphan, and it would not be hard to guess Yuan Song's identity. However, everyone's attention was caught by the first part of his sentence. A person's name, a tree's shadow. Once Huanyu sect Zongju's identity was revealed, everyone's reaction was a moment's shock. The curious gazes on Yan Wushi turned complicated. There was awe, fear, surprise. There were some who couldn't believe it. No one was unaffected. Most of Wuxia sect's disciples had never seen Yan Wushi in person, but that hadn't stopped them from hearing the legends about Yan Wushi. To them, Qi Fengge and Kui Youwang were close to legendary figures, and someone who could challenge those two in a fight and be evenly matched. That Yan Wushi was also pretty much the stuff of legends. Under these various gazes, Yan Wushi stood with his hands clasped behind his back in a relaxed stance, not uneasy in the least, evidently used to this by now. Shen Qiao descended the mountain to save someone. In between so many ups and downs, Zhao Qiaying had heard the rumors, but still the distance was far, and she didn't know exactly what happened. She didn't expect that when Shen Qiao went to rescue a person, he would bring this person back with him, and so was momentarily shocked. Returning to her senses, folded her hands in greeting. Yan Zongju's name precedes him. I am Wuxia sect's Zhao Qiaying. I welcome Yan Zongju's gracious visit. Only our sect is diminished. If there's any inadequacies in our hospitality, please forgive us. As the Zongju of Wuxia sect, Zhao Qiaying's attitude could be considered extremely courteous. Given the rumors about Yan Wushi's temperamental moods, Zhao Qiaying didn't want to insult the other over a minor detail. Yan Wushi, Zhao Zongju runs things fairly, the sex is well disciplined. I have long heard of its reputation. Along our journey Qiao also praised Zhao Zongju often. Today in person, I find of course all this is true. I hope my abrupt visit will not complicate things for Zhao Zongju. Yi, what a normal response. Not only was Zhao Qiaying caught by surprise, but Shen Qiao was too. At this moment, Yan Wushi was smiling, warm and courteous, his whole body emanating a easygoing vibe. Nowhere was there a hint of the arrogance characteristic of the demonic sects. Only this Qiao seemed a bit overly familiar. Shen Qiao, having heard it so many times, was long numb to it. The bystanders felt it was a bit strange, but couldn't really say why. Could only attribute it to the fact that Shen Qiao and Huanyu sect's Yan Zongju had an unusual relationship. After this good start, everything followed smoothly. They each paid their respects, sat down. Shiwu, after hearing the news, ran over. Their reunion was a moving scene. Shiwu looked up to Shen Qiao with childhood admiration, directly ran to give Shen Qiao a hug while everyone was watching. Shen Qiao saw that he had grown taller, and was reassured. Yuan Song to the side was judging this future Shikshan, was curious, but a bit disappointed. Clearly the other was older than him. How come their mannerisms and speech were weaker than him, so reliant on Shizun? When would he be able to stand on his own? He seemed to have forgotten, in those few days right after departing Chang'an, his unsettled heart. Every night it was him that needed to see Shen Qiao's figure before he could fall asleep. Putting aside these childish ruminations for the moment, Zhao Qiaying said to Shen Qiao, Shen Daozang came back at the right time. Wuxia sect today has precious few people. We need to bring on new disciples quickly. Me and Shikshan were just worried about this. Would Shen Daozang be willing to help discuss this? Yu Kunchi tactfully said, Zongju, Shen Daozang has just arrived after his journey. He's probably exhausted. Shouldn't they rest a bit before continuing our conversation? With his reminder, Zhao Qiaying was slightly embarrassed. Shikshan is right, it is me who's too rushed, let Yuanbei bring you to your quarters to rest. Shen Daozang, would it be okay if you stayed in the same house you were in last time? Shen Qiao nodded, yes, I thank Zhao Zongji for her care, Qi Lang can stay next door to Shiwu, that way it's easier for them to connect. Zhao Qiaying, great, to the east side of our sect there is a bamboo dwelling, reserved for the use of esteemed guests, if Yan Zongji doesn't mind, he can stay there. The house Shen Qiao stayed at last time was one used by the sect elders, the intention was that Wuxia sect didn't see him as an outsider, but if Yan Wushi were to stay there, it would look like a slight. However, Yan Wushi said, no need to trouble you, I'll stay where Qiao is staying. Zhao Qiaying's face was still, ah. Is that not very convenient? Yan Wushi raised an eyebrow, nothing inconvenient, on our journey, we would often arrange things this way, this venerable one doesn't even remember how many times we've shared lodgings. Although this wasn't false, somehow when it came out of his mouth it seemed to take on a different flavor. Shen Qiao couldn't help but interject, that was when we were traveling and had to make do, and compromised. Today Yan Zongji can stay more comfortably, if you refuse, it would go against Zhao Zongji's good intentions. Yan Wushi, it's no problem. Me and Qiao's relationship isn't a common one, he looks at Wuxia sect very favorably, so you don't have to consider this venerable one an outsider either, as you will, there can't be not a single vacant house next door to his. Although he was smiling when he said this, Zhao Qiaying clearly felt a domineering pressure. Under this type of gaze, her scalp stiffened involuntarily, without thinking on it further the words had left her mouth, there is. Yan Wushi smiled, then that works. This time his smile was different from the last. Zhao Qiaying felt the pressure on her body lifting. She secretly breathed a sigh of relief, hurried to call Fan Yuanbei to take them to their quarters to rest. After Shen Qiao and the others left, inside the meeting pavilion there remained just the two of them. Yu Kunchi revealed a heavy expression, whoever Yan Zongji wants to stay next door to, it's not like there's no space, let him be. I saw that Shen Daozang didn't outright refuse, clearly permission given. Back there I wanted to advise you not to go against Yan Zongji's wishes, who knew I almost couldn't get out a single word. He didn't know that the reason Shen Qiao didn't outright refuse, was because he knew it was futile to refuse. Zhao Qiaying, with a grimace, at risk of being laughed at, I'll tell you I was not much better than you. Wuxia sect and Huanyu sect have never had relations, a small temple can't house a large god, we don't know what his intentions are coming here, would it bring Wuxia sect misfortune? Yu Kunchi was less worried, we have Shen Daozang here, I don't think he will do anything, knowing Yan Wushi's tumultuous character, we should just be careful, and let all the disciples be a bit more tactful in their speech, in case we insult him. Zhao Qiaying nods, this is true. Fan Yuanbei had brought them to the houses they were to be staying at, these houses were cleaned regularly, neat and tidy, inside were placed some plants and grasses, exceedingly stylish. If Yan Zongju or Shen Daozang need anything just send word, we're here for you anytime. Fan Yuanbei wanted to talk to Shen Qiao a bit more, seeing Yan Wushi was still standing beside him, didn't manage to say an extra single word, could only honestly finish what he was saying, hurriedly close the conversation, flee in defeat. Shiwu was still young, didn't have a huge sense of things, he had been waiting so long for Shen Qiao and Zhao Qiaying and them to finish speaking, for a chance to catch up more privately, although Yan Wushi and Yuan Song remained alongside, it was no obstacle to his desire in pulling aside Shen Qiao to say, Shizun, you were gone for so long, this disciple missed you a lot. Shen Qiao patted his head, while this teacher was gone, I also missed you. I heard you were doing well in Wuxia sect, and you even grew a little taller. Shiwu nodded shyly. Wuxia sect's Shictions treated me very well. After Shizun left, I practiced the sword every day. I didn't want to let you down. Now I already can wield the whole set of Kanglang sword style. These words carried with them an air of playfulness and praise-seeking. Yuan Song couldn't help frowning to himself, intoned, he's older than me by several years, do I really have to call him Shikshan in the future? Shen Qiao smiled, really? Then why don't you wield it now for us? Shiwu hesitated, will it interfere with Shizun's rest? Shen Qiao, we rested last night at the base of the mountain, now it's not yet past noon, it's still early, this teacher is not tired. Hearing this, Shiwu happily went to go get his sword. He had only been studying the sword for less than a year, in the way of the sword he was only a beginner, so the sword he carried was wooden, and not a real one. Under the gaze of three, he stood in position and greeted them, twirled his wrist, made the starting stance, hand-raised sword fall, each motion, each form was performed methodically, quite regular, not badly done, but not outstanding, compared to Yuan Song's natural caliber, was still slightly lacking, but Chaiwu knew his base was average, so put in extra effort. This set of sword style was by now very familiar to him. Please advise me, Shizun. Shiwu pulled back his sword and stood still, said this earnestly. Shen Qiao didn't want to hurt him, so started with the positive, your movements are well practiced, I can see your efforts, in this time you definitely haven't slacked off. Then he added, but in this sword style there were some forms that were used incorrectly, in the future it will affect their power, this teacher has only demonstrated it to you once, it would be difficult to remember every detail, today I'll demonstrate it to you again from beginning to end, you should watch carefully, and compare it to your own. Shiwu said seriously, yes. Shen Qiao did not use Shen Hetongbai sword, but took from his hand the wooden sword, smiled gently, Kanglang sword style, as the name describes, the sea has no edge, the waves surge forth, the rocks repeatedly swallowed by the sea, and repeatedly breaking its surface, the day brilliant, every wave powerful, this is that kind of grand landscape, one who practices the sword style, must contain the sea that receives 100 rivers, that equanimity, only then can you perform its essence. Ascend Taishan, see the sea, you should look far into the distance, the days are long, you will realize in time. Saying this, without waiting for a response from Shiwu, he raised his sword. The same wooden sword, in the hands of two different people, showed a completely different kind of power. If Shiwu could be described as merely a first look in the doorway, the set of sword style wielded evenly, making Yuan Song bored out of his mind, then when Shen Qiao moved his sword, he had to open his eyes wide, as if he could not believe the two were wielding the same sword style. The wind swung clear, sword shadow fell everywhere, even though he hadn't used his genki, that wooden sword seemed to glow in its own light. Following Shen Qiao's form and movement, Yuan Song could almost see the surging sea, flying rain, melting cloud, reflection in the water, standing in the mountainous waves, was a lone person. Before their eyes there remained a person, between the sky and earth there remained only this person. After completing this set, Shen Qiao stood still, Yuan Song still saw the scene from before, it didn't fade for a long time. Yan Wushi held a smile, A Qiao in the way of the sword is exceptional, has entered the realm of the Grand Masters. Shen Qiao, I thank Yan Zongji for his favor. He wielded the sword style not for Yan Wushi to admire, but for Shiwu and Yuan Song. Did you gain something from that? Shiwu mumbled, forgive this disciple's bad way with words, I just feel overwhelmed, like something is about to burst from my chest, but if asked to describe it, I wouldn't be able to. Shen Qiao gave a gentle reply, no matter, no one can look once and reach divinity, you can think on it slowly, if there's something you don't understand just come ask. Shiwu voiced his agreement. Shen Qiao turned to Yuan Song, you haven't formally entered training, these last few days we've only done some meditative practice, if you don't have anything to add it's fine. Yuan Song, I have 1,000 words, but it can be covered by a few. His manner of speaking was always like someone much older. Shen Qiao found it funny, which words? Yuan Song, like the cloud and the hidden moon, drifting like the wind and returning snow. Looking into the far distance, bright like the sun rising in the mist, once observed, burning like a lotus above water. This was the part in Luo Shenfu singing about Luo Shen's beauty. He didn't know how to react, but it had to be said. Yuan Song had captured one element of Kang Lang's sword style, and that was I carry 10,000 permutations, under the sword light-hearted and drifting. On this point, Yuan Song compared to Shiwu was more naturally inclined. Yan Wushi said coldly, he has no knowledge base in the martial arts, reciting Luo Shenfu only to flirt, this kind of caliber is wasted on words alone, allow this venerable one to work on him. Saying this not waiting for others' response, he pressed a palm onto Yuan Song's shoulder, the latter yelped, body sinking involuntarily, then the meridians on his upper body were sealed. Yan Zongju. Yuan Song gaped, maintaining a forced squat, he couldn't move, the tragic part was he didn't know where he went wrong. Yan Wushi saw Shen Qiao opening his mouth to speak, smiling not smiling said, to speak frivolously towards Shifu, even in Huanyu sect which is known by all to be a demonic sect, will result in discipline. Qiao, you're so kind teaching your disciples, I should help you get your disciples in line. Shen Qiao face unreadable, Yan Zongju has finally stopped trying to steal my disciple. Yan Wushi drawled, for the sake of his life, I won't fight over him anymore, otherwise the first day I accept this disciple I will have killed him. On that first day, with the exception of Shen Qiao and Shiwu, no one saw how Yan Wushi treated Yuan Song, and so all of Wuxia sect's disciples thought he was someone easy to get along with, different from the rumors. On the second day, they found they were mistaken. All the disciples were out for morning training, in the square they practiced with each other, Yan Wushi stood to the side with his hands behind him, even if it was Yu Kunchi or Zhao Qiaying personally demonstrating, he would have found inadequacies, the condescending tone was complimentary. Wuxia sect's disciples were not happy, stepped forward to challenge him, unsurprisingly they were all beaten to the ground. In the end Yu Kunchi and Zhao Qiaying also lost against him. Past noon by the time Shen Qiao emerged from seclusion, heard the disturbance and rushed over, Yan Wushi had already toyed with Wuxia sect from top to bottom. Of course, given Yan Wushi's ability, if he wanted to massacre the entire sect it would not have been a hard thing, but you a grandmaster, instead of finding an opponent on your level, chose to bully this small sect, what the hell was that? It really couldn't be to find some sense of accomplishment, to find yourself some joy. If Shen Qiao wasn't here, Wuxia sect would have thought this person was here maliciously. Shen Qiao, facing a chorus of groans and moans from people lying on the ground, could only force a smile and apologize to Zhao Qiaying. Zhao Qiaying was generous, gestured with her hands, Yan Zongju just saw that our Wuzhong was lacking, offered us some tips on how to improve, to have this kind of opportunity, Wuxia sect is only too happy to accept. After she had spoken this way, everyone felt that it was indeed true. Most of them, in their entire lifetimes would not be able to come close to the skill level of a sect leader, never mind catch a glimpse of Yan Wushi's shadow. People admire the strong, to have crossed paths with Yan Wushi, never mind if beaten badly, even if severely injured, it would have been worth it, to have not wasted the sojourn on the road of martial arts. Once this thought occurred, the gaze in which they looked upon Yan Wushi, went from the fear dissatisfaction of before, to respect and admiration. Yu Kunchi was holding his arm exclaiming that Shimei definitely had the air of a sect leader, when he heard someone beside him say casually, "Pining by yourself for some 10-20 years, but still haven't confessed, what does it feel like? This venerable one has never experienced it, please advise." This sentence was like an arrow to his heart, succeeded in hitting the innermost workings of his heart. Hearing it made Yu Kunchi's hair stand on end, a big turn in his expression. The way he looked at Yan Wushi was like he was looking at a ghost. Before Yu Kunchi could reply, Shen Qiao had pulled Yan Wushi away. Yan Wushi didn't resist, letting Shen Qiao pull him to the side, still smiling amicably. Shen Qiao held his forehead. "Yan Zongju, do you have a lot of free time?" Yan Wushi, surprised, "Why would I? Every day I have to play with you, and I have to advise this bundle of scrap wood, I'm very busy." Shen Qiao grimaced, speechless, finally found his voice again. "You should be in Chang'an assisting the new emperor, yet 1,000 li later you came with me to Wuxia sect, probably not just to tour the scenery, or to tease others. This kind of aimless thing. All things considered, Yan Zongju is still unwilling to tell me your purpose. Yan Wushi, if you call me by a different name, this venerable one will consider telling you, how about it?" Shen Qiao, baffled, "What name?" "Yan Wushi, how about Yan Lang?" Shen Qiao muttered to himself, "Of course he's just toying with me," gave no reply, turned and walked away. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.